Hello everyone, and welcome back to Polybridge 2. It's June. Do you know what that means? That means I'm done with school and I can finally work on videos again. It's also Pride Month, but we'll not talk about that. There's a bit of rescheduling and some new news that I'll talk about later into the video, but let's get on to the main show. Over the past 3 or so months, I've been playing Polybridge 2 on my phone. Thank you to the devs for giving me the game for free, by the way, on that case. Over these 3 or so months, I've discovered so many cool things, including beating levels that are intended for hydraulics without hydraulics. Let me show you what I mean. So I've chosen level 6-10 as an example. Its name is Bridge in a Box, and as the name says, you need to build a bridge within a box or else it'll be destroyed by the falling blocks. First, let me show you how to beat this the expected way. So as you can see, it's not an insanely hard level to beat, it just requires a reasonable amount of logic on how hydraulics can move parts, but that's about it. Anyways, let's get on with the over-engineering. Now, it's usually just a truss system that the whole no hydraulic deal works on, but now with modding, I can remove hydraulics entirely from Arsenal. To start things off, I would prefer to keep the final bridge completely flat just because it looks pretty that way, so in the middle the roads are just going to be here. Next, I'm going to extend as much road off of these, which I managed to get about 3 roads. I then added some structural support to the roads with a bit of steel and added counterbalance, though it kept hitting the falling blocks, so I just put them on split joints so they wouldn't disconnect after the blocks fell. So I noticed that it was naturally rotating clockwise rather than what I was hoping for, which was to rotate it counterclockwise. But I realized later that I could just replace the road's positions and it would just naturally snap into place. However, there's a bit of a problem, which is that when it's moving, it needs to be stopped somehow when it goes into its position, or else it's going to overshoot. Now, the first thing that you obviously can do is just add a cable, which will just limit its movement, but it still rotates way too quickly and just breaks. Most people would go the route of just reinforcing the crap out of it, but that just pushes the problem further down the line. So, how do you actually solve it? Well, you need to slow it down, but how exactly do you slow it down? The solution I found was to just simply build underground. And there's a specific reason why. In Polybridge 2, water has a little bit of resistance, or at least has an oversimplified version of water resistance, but surprisingly, the entire region below the landmasses also has the exact same physics, despite having no water around there, which we can still take advantage of. What I found is that you could basically create large ballasts inside the water, and the greater the mass something has, the more difficult it is to turn, and if it has a lot of water resistance, it's hard to build any speed above a certain point. It's kind of like a friction brake, but without any parts coming in contact with each other. Before I made the ballast delays though, I still need to hook it to the actual mechanism above. So I decided to just use a whole bunch of cables and just copy paste it down below. I thought it was going to work based on the logic of 4-bar linkages, but it turned out there are a few problems. First of all, it was way too big. The mechanism was colliding with the falling blocks and it just broke the whole thing. That was an easy fix. What wasn't an easy fix was actually getting connection correct. In order for cables to actually work like 4-bar linkages, you need these spokes to be less than 180 degrees of each other. In this design, 2 of the bars were actually 270 degrees apart from each other. To solve this, I thought that putting them at 90-degree intervals would be fairly stable and also works on an orthographic grid as well. But there's another problem with that. We can't extend the spoke out to the left because it would just break due to the falling block. What I did come up with is just more 4-bar linkages above, which would allow the connection to be within the box. And so with that problem fixed, I could add the spokes and then just let it run. And as you can see, it works pretty much fine. So the next obvious step was that I just needed to flip it over, but before I did, I had to check for overlapping nodes, and there were a couple that needed to be fixed, but it wasn't a big deal. And after I just adjusted some things, I was able to paste it in, and now we have both sides working. Now though, we've been kind of avoiding a glaringly large problem. We're short 2 road lengths. Well, here now, we can actually cheese the level a little bit. Although the level is called Bridge in a Box, you're not just confined to the box area. You have a lot of open space off to the sides. So technically, you could just place the final 2 roads here, and just to complete the section, you just need the bridge to rotate 90 degrees clockwise. Now, I could do the same thing in the middle with the split joints and all, but the lever would actually end up being in the ground, which isn't possible to construct.
It's also asynchronous, which I do not like.
So I took advantage of another little quirk of the game's mechanics. Although joints can collide with the falling blocks, the material doesn't actually. Meaning I could effectively connect both sides together really easily by just using a cable. So I first did a translation from the anchor to being in the air so that I could construct a square, and then I observed which one of the 2 squares I needed to connect to in order to complete this, which in this case was the orange one because it's rotating clockwise. Now that I've tethered it though, another problem arises. The lever is no longer as balanced, so it slams down more vigorously and then breaks the mechanism again. The first idea I had in mind was just to instinctively add more weight to the ballast, but I realized it probably would be better to just figure out a way to balance out the mechanism itself instead. Conveniently, I still had those original 3 rods in place as a counterweight, so I just need to shave 2 of them off and it works as fine again. I then flipped the whole bridge, and as you can see, it works just fine. However, looks can be deceptive. Even though it looks like it's fully constructed, it's actually not ready to cross yet. If I let the car go now, the first problem you'll notice is that it will start pushing against the road deck, and eventually it will have enough grip to drive on top of it while the bridge is still trying to settle into place. This accelerates the rotation and then causes it to break. The second problem is that this is entirely powered by balance, and once the car crosses, it tips the balance and the road deck just falls back down, dropping the taxi into the water. Well, let's deal with the second problem first. Once the bridge rotates, how can we set it into place such that it stays in place? Well, let me introduce you to a mechanism known as the mechanical lock. To make one, you just create a kite shape, and once the whole linkage just goes into collinear state, it will fold into itself and then lock the bars together, creating the mechanical lock. I implemented it directly into this bridge, and sure enough, it works pretty much like a charm. I did decide to make a bit of a modification to it so that it doesn't swing so much, but that's just mostly me as a personal preference. It doesn't really change anything to the bridge. Now, using the mechanical lock, you can actually solve the first problem as well. If you use a square, you can see that it works kind of like a lock as the one I used from earlier, but now focus on this dark blue beam. You may notice that it's entirely flat up until when the mechanical lock engages. Now for a square, you can brace it like this, but now watch what happens when you remove one of the links. You can see that it still functions as a mechanical lock. And from this, if you focus on the yellow beam, you can see that it does the opposite of a mechanical lock, and instead acts like a mechanical release. I connected it to the stopper, and just as planned, the bridge moves up into position before it finally releases the car, and then lets it drive to the end. Now, when it's zoomed out, it's not exactly pretty. It's asynchronous, and as I said before, I don't really like that. But how do we sync up the rotations? Well, a while back, I was doing some research and I was reading a book written by Alfred Bray Kemp called How to Draw a Straight Line, a Lecture on Linkages. It's available for people to read online for free. Link is in the description. On page 37, Kemp states, if I take a kite and pivot the blunt end to the fixed base, and I make the sharp end move up and down in a straight line, passing through the fixed pivot, the short linkages will rotate about the fixed point with equal velocities in opposite directions. And below it, there is a diagram of this kite. But, along with it, there is another demonstration with 2 anchor points, which means it can actually work with my situation as well. So that's how I could do it. I took 2 rotating ballasts and connected them together with a V-shaped pair of links. Then I utilized the linkage, which I've featured in my past builds, though never really explained what it was. This linkage is called a Peaucellier-Lipkin linkage, and it can produce theoretically perfect straight lines. I connected it to the V-shape, mirrored it just because I like mirroring stuff, and the whole bridge was complete. Here is the final product. So that's pretty much everything done for this bridge. Now, as I said from the beginning, I do have quite a bit of stuff to talk about, though I don't have much filler recording left to show, so I'll just go through it very quickly. But anyways, that's about it. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, and if you would like to see more content like this, feel free to subscribe. I'm Marglin, your local Poly engineer, and have a wonderful summer. Peace.